So let's go back roughly about a year, maybe a little bit longer. You guys are on a Zoom call, and all of a sudden you are told that you are the winners of just a little bit of amount of money.
Small amount.
What was that experience like? I mean, I saw the video, but I did not fathom just how incredible that experience must have been for you guys.
Yeah, a year ago we won the AT&T Untold Stories program, which gave us $1 million to make our first feature film, which we just screened here at Bentonville. It's hard to put in words what that feeling is. I mean, it's on YouTube, right? You can see my actual reaction. That is pure shock. My actor friends were like, "Oh, that's a case study in how to play surprise and shock," because we fundamentally were not expecting to win. I don't know if I've had a moment to really live with it, because once we won, we started making the movie.
Yeah.
You know, like literally we started making calls like an hour later. We had like the phones blew up, and then it was, okay, now you got it, so go do it. It felt validating, and like this whole year with this program and making this film, it's felt very validating, like a vindication of the stories that I've been trying to tell and have been telling, that they matter and that there was an audience for them, and finally getting a support system to make it. There's a lot wrapped up in it.
Well, I mean, I don't know how many people realize. I mean, we're in Texas, so we and my partner Dev has Indian background, so the history of the Indian population coming to America is so rich, is so long, that I don't think people understand that. I don't think that people understand how vast across the country, and in the South, your film touches on that so well. I know that's a passion of yours to get out there. How is it not been well known? Like, how's it still a secret? Yeah, you know, even South Asians don't even know about our rich history in the United States. You know, I think a lot of that is media representation and what is out there. We know about the sort of diaspora that came in the 60s and 70s of South Asians to America, and people don't realize that we've been here since the late 1800s. Punjabi loggers and farmers who came to California, Oregon, Washington to make a better life, just like every immigrant, right? And it's interesting because I am Punjabi and I'm Sikh, and I immigrated to the United States in 1990. And I didn't know about it until I just started doing research like 4 or 5 years ago. And I think it's just within our communities, especially with older generations, I find there's this feeling of not wanting to talk about the past or traumas or things, because it's like kind of like an immigrant thing, right? Like we don't talk about the hardship, we just get through it and we move on. And we don't talk to therapists, you know, like we just live with it. And, you know, Land of Gold, the film, is very much about that prospect and that aspect. But, you know, I think when we're talking about what it is to be an American, a lot of it is loaded in the past of like, why do you come to this country? Why are we here, right? Unless you're First Nations, everyone's an immigrant. Oh, well, not everyone. You know, I shouldn't say that. With the Black community too, but you know, our place in America is very much based on our past and how we came here and what we've had to struggle with. And at least with the South Asian community, there hasn't really been a very large knowledge base of what that history really entails, because there's so much of it, but a lot of it has just been untold, not only to the wider America, but also to us as South Asians here. I'm rambling a little bit, but it was fascinating to me that I didn't know about this stuff, and that my relatives didn't know about this. And they're like, "Oh, wait a minute, what? Wait, there was like a Singh here in 1901. The first Gurdwara when was that built? Like, that's pretty crazy." And unless you're in those sort of niche communities, you don't know about that stuff. So, like, as a storyteller, I feel like it's important, you know, as we're living in a very divisive country right now, and we're constantly having to check and recheck what is it to be an American. It's important, I think, for me to put stories out there that reflect on the wide swath of what American is, and the South Asian part of that is very much embedded in it.
One of my favorite moments in the film, to touch upon you bringing up your religion, or the character's religion especially, there's a great conversation that the two of you guys have that really gets to the heart of being an immigrant, even with the difference in age, different backgrounds. The similarities are so connected.
Yeah.
How cathartic was this process for you? How emotionally a part of you is a part of this story?
A big part. The big part of this story is me. I mean, I'm unpacking traumas my family's had, traumas I have, fears I have. I would love to have kids at some point, and I'm constantly, as my friends have kids and I see my brother with his kids, and, thinking about my parents and our struggles growing up here. And I'm very curious when I have the opportunity to have a child, what's going to come up? What's been like gurgling and burbling and bubbling up inside me that will come up, because that happens, and how will I deal with it? How will I confront it and move forward from it so I don't reenact the same things that I dislike, and that I can be like the best possible parent, and give my kids the shot that they deserve, knowing that there will be challenges for them simply because of skin color and ethnicity and stuff like that, which is unfortunate, but there's a lot wrapped up in this film. It feels good to be able to put it on screen because, sure, it's like my version of therapy in many ways, which is maybe not the healthiest way to do it, in the most public sphere, but I hope that me asking these questions allows other folks who are asking the same questions to have something that they can draw on, like, oh right, I've been afraid of this stuff, I've been tackling this stuff, oh, I haven't really reconciled that, and then seeing this character's journey and the similarities with Elena in it, Kieran and Elena, will help unlock something deep inside them that they can tackle their, struggles themselves too. And then to kind of compound on that with the immigrant, the kind of marrying the two immigrant experiences, I find that in immigrant communities, we're often pitted against each other, politically. And there's like a right way to do it, which is what we're told, but that's also like a colonialist messaging that we've kind of internalized. And I think something that I've been wanting to do with this movie, and I'm very sort of I feel good that it's resonating, is that we're more similar than we are apart. And it's not just immigrants, it's everybody. It's white Americans, black Americans, Indian Americans, Asian Americans, right? Like Latino Americans. We all want the same things. Maybe we speak some different languages, but ultimately we all want the same thing. So if we can talk and if we can empathize, we'll be able to grow together as opposed to being pitted against each other.
So I'm curious, obviously looking at you get announced you guys are going to be able to do this, you have the money now, you have the aspirations, you've got a year to do it.
Yeah.
Dive into the casting process and finding this cast, because that, I'm guessing, was the next thought. Oh, we've got to populate this film.
So one of my producers, Kirtana Sastry, she is a wonderful casting director as well. So we trusted her and was like, okay, find us Elena, right? So we did a national search, and we found Caroline Valencia out of Long Island. And we did a couple of auditions. We did like the initial read, a callback, and then we did a chemistry read where, I did it with her, and it was all via Zoom, because it was during COVID. Yeah. And her chemistry read ended. She and her mom logged off, and it was the producing team: Pallavi Sastry, Kirtana Sastry, Simon Tofik, and me. And we're sitting there, and we're just silent. And then Pallavi screams, "She's a star!" So right. We just knew. It was just immediate. Like,
we had a connection that was just immediate, and she was able to internalize Elena, and her version of Elena was just really beautiful, and it was pretty magical to have seen that happen over Zoom. I'm in the film. That was a pretty easy sell. I called myself and said, hey, do you want to do this? And I was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. Pallavi, one of my producers, is also in the film. She plays my wife in the film. She's, we've both been, as we call it, blue-collar working actors, where we've been on TV and theater and film, and you'll just never recognize us because we just haven't had the shot yet. So we were like, let's give ourselves a shot, and we're great. We know we can do it, so let's do it. Iqbal Teba, he's a legend in the industry, right? He's been around for a long time, and he went to Oklahoma University. So did Pallavi. So they had the OU connection, and we actually reached out to him to help us with a reading of the script during COVID before we won the competition.
Oh wow!
And he was very happy to do that, lend his talents. He was like my first choice in my head from the beginning. I was like, he fits the vibe of
for your father's
for my
character.
father, for Gurinder, yeah. And he did the reading, and then when we got the money, we were like, do you want to do this? And he's like, of course I do. And he really responded to the script and the type of character, and it's interesting because there's not a lot of screen time, but what he does with it is remarkable, right? I'm really, really thankful that a full character arc happens with him, and he's in it for you get everything you need, and he brings that, right? And then Ritti Sachdeva, who played my mom in the film, she's amazing, an actor and playwright out of New York, and again hasn't had much of an opportunity to play the big part. So it and then we got some friends, Dhruv Uday and Karen David, to be in it, and filled out the cast with local Oklahomans, which was really, really lovely. But the cast came together fairly easily, and it was kind of serendipitous, when things are supposed to happen, they happen. That kind of happened with the cast. The pieces just fell into place, and and the chemistry was there, and it was quite beautiful.
You've mentioned Oklahomians, OU. Why is that important in this film, of all reasons? Is that maybe where you filmed it?
What? Do you know something? So we filmed we shot the film on location in Oklahoma. So Pallavi, as I mentioned, went to Oklahoma University. So she pitched the state to me in the sense that, as someone who had never been to Oklahoma, I would never have thought of this, but Oklahoma is a huge state that has a beautiful and wide array of topography. So if you go to the western part, you can get some desert stuff. And then you can go to the eastern part of the state and get some East Coasty vibes. And there are neighborhoods in Oklahoma City and in Tulsa that feel New Englandy and all that. So when we were thinking about, we're doing a cross-country road trip, how do you do that for $1 million with a semi-truck? Heart of hearts, I would have loved to have actually done the road trip. It's a production nightmare. But we were able to fake it in Oklahoma really, really beautifully with real locations and populated with actors and talent and production design that helped place us in different parts of the country. So it felt seamless and kind of feel and have a hub for our crew and our cast. So we weren't going all over the place. So we shot in Oklahoma. We also worked with the Cherokee Nation, which was amazing and serendipitous. The Cherokee Nation has a state-of-the-art XR studio in Owasso, just outside of Tulsa, and through their wonderful generosity, they allowed us to shoot in their studio on their LED wall, and we were the first non-nation film to shoot there, and it basically allowed us to shoot our road trip sequences inside the truck. We have a 9-year-old, Caroline, and me, and that's a logistical nightmare with a semi-truck. But we basically faked it, and you can't tell.
Yeah.
We shot it on this LED wall with plates, and we were able to choose the time of day with it and everything.
I was going to ask if you actually learned to drive a semi, because it doesn't look...
I wanted to learn to drive a semi. When we got the award, I had already been looking into truck driving schools, and then we got the award, but the turnaround for production was so quick that by the time I would have taken lessons to get the permit, to get the license, we would have been done production. Because,
it's not just a car. It's like a heavy piece of equipment. You're driving a missile down the highway, basically. And just like ethically, like I'm like, do I as the director and as the actor want to drive a semi-truck with a 9-year-old in the passenger seat, my DP in the back seat with a sound guy? And probably not. So shooting it in studio allowed us, the opportunity for nuance, both in location with like, we can set time of day now with the lighting, but it allowed us nuance in performance, for Caroline and for myself in those sequences, because a lot of the bonding happens on the road. It's a road trip movie. So we got to really sink our teeth into those sequences.
No, it works. It definitely works.
Thank you.
Earlier you mentioned some of your producers. You mentioned Simon.
Yeah.
The music in this film is heartbreaking at times, uplifting.
Yeah.
It's kind of magical how it flows in with the story.
Thank you.
What was it like working with Simon on capturing this feel? Because it is a beautiful element of the film.
Thank you. And thank you for responding to that. Yeah. Simon's a genius. He's Emmy nominated for a reason. It was such an amazing collaboration. I can be a bit of a tough sell with music. Like, I'm very specific about it. And Simon and we worked together for like 3 weeks straight. He kept coming up with samples, different ideas, and was like, oh, that's working. Oh, maybe this is and we were able to find this really beautiful theme. And it organically happened. And then we just kept building off this theme through the course of the music. And we talked a lot, this is a South Asian story, a Latino story in many ways. And we talked about references of like, do we bring in some of those elements into the film and all that? And we had our temp score. And as we were working on the music, he kept bringing in these ideas of these swelling strings and things like that, music you may not expect or associate with this subject matter or these characters, because you're trained and conditioned to think like, this is this type of story, this is what it should be. And I think what he brought to it was just incredible. Actually, I can share this story. This is great. We recorded our strings in Iceland in this specific studio that's known for the haunting quality of the acoustics. So the strings sound very loaded and textured, and the instrument, the musicians play it. They play it beautifully too, but they also have an exquisite way of playing it, right? So he was very adamant, and rightfully so, of getting these strings recorded there, knowing that they were going to play such a big part in these other parts of the film as it builds, right? The score starts small and it kind of grows, just like the film does. And we talked a lot about the intergenerational aspect of this story, about the traumas that you have from family and from the past, and how you have to unpack that as you kind of move on, and how do you pass that on to your kids. So I like this idea of haunted, this haunted idea of the strings. And so we got them recorded in Iceland, and they sound exquisite. Like, that was one of my favorite parts of the post-production process, was sitting in my apartment in LA. I woke up my girlfriend, and I was like, you got to listen to this. And we were hearing the raw strings being recorded in Iceland at like 7 a.m. and just started crying. It was just so beautiful. And then what Simon did with those pieces and how he mixed them and built, it was an exquisite partnership, and I'm excited to keep working with him, because I think what he brought to the film was unexpected and beautiful and brilliant, and all the things.
It adds so many layers. It's really crazy. Because story-wise, I think it's strong enough on its own. Yeah. But it's just, like you said, that history element bleeds in. And it's weird how it's the music. I never would have expected that.
Yeah, I've always, I feel like as independent filmmakers, we're constantly having to work with limitations, and music is often something we run away from because it's like, we don't want the music to tell the story or something like that. But I grew up with Indian cinema and, Japanese cinema, and like music is such a big part of Asian culture. And, I grew up on these swelling scores like the Lawrence of Arabia's, and, so music has always been a big part of my films. And when we were editing the film, we had temp score, but my editor, Emily, and we were like, we need this to work without music. And if the music comes in, it's only going to enhance everything that's already happening there. So if you're about to cry, it's going to tip you over the edge, right? And Simon was in complete agreement with that. So it was really beautiful to see how he was able to emphasize, and then I could let the music kind of take over. Because I love that in films, you know, when you're sitting in a cinema and you're like ready for you don't even know you're ready for that emotional moment to happen, and then the music just sweeps you up, right? It happens in action movies now all the time, but like in a drama for that to happen, and then for you to not even realize it's happening, oof, that's the goal. So I'm glad that's resonating.
You've had the title since. But when you guys won, was that always the title?
Yeah.
Why is the title important?
Land of Gold. Yes, good question. So when I was developing the script, I was listening to an album by Anushka Shankar called Land of Gold. And the title track of it is called Land of Gold. And I, you know, when I'm writing, I tend to get obsessive about what I'm listening to at the time, make a playlist. And sometimes the playlist is like 1 song, 3 songs or whatever, and I will repeat them on loop. And her track was about the refugee crisis in Syria, about that. And it was around the time I was writing Land of Gold, untitled at the time, but I was talking about immigration, first generation immigration, these separated kids at the border, this generation that America was creating that's going to be lost, filled with all this trauma that didn't need to happen, basically because we didn't have empathy towards these families and what they were going through. And I started thinking about, okay, well, why do people come to America then if this is what they're going to be walking into, knowing that they want a better life for their family? They think of America as the land of prospect. And then as you drive across America, I really personally believe that America is one of the best places to see sunsets because the land literally glitters, right? It's like the stories you heard back in the day before the Dust Bowl, right? It was like, oh, agriculture, farming, like this is it. Why did the Punjabis come over here in the 1800s, right, to farm? Because there was so much rich soil. Land of Gold. It just made sense. It couldn't be anything else at that point. It's about Kieran, who's trying to create a land of gold for his new child. And it's about Elena, who's desperately trying to redefine what that means for her now that her life has been completely upturned and turned inside out.
Wow. Thank you for that. Yeah. I was hoping for something like that, and it paid off.
You're only the second person to ask that so far, and I'm really happy. I feel like at post screenings, people want to ask it, but they're like a little like, should we ask it or not? But yeah,
it's very cool. So obviously, with the AT&T Tribeca situation, Tribeca was a triumphant place, but on this festival circuit, Bentonville.
Yeah.
You have a strong female presence behind the camera, of course, with the character of Elena in front of the camera.
Yeah.
How important is it to be in this festival, knowing what Gina and Wendy's goals are? I mean, diversity, inclusion.
Yeah.
What was it like hearing you're going to make it here? But also, what does it feel like to bring a film here? Because you are showing it to an audience that I think is keeping their eyes open for something new, fresh, that they don't normally get to see.
Yeah. It feels amazing. I've been following Bentonville's journey since its inception. I mean, the festival is in its 9th year, I believe. 9th year?
8th, yeah.
8th. The festival is in its 8th year, and it's already gotten to the top of, festivals, right? Like, Bentonville. Everyone knows Bentonville. This festival is like a big player, right? And like you said, the messaging and the mission statement behind the festival is exactly what I live for. As you said, my team is predominantly women, both in front of the camera and behind the camera. Inclusivity is like the thing for me, right? Not only in how we cast it, but also the crew members who work on it. It's in the storytelling. It's inherent in it, inclusivity. So to be at a festival that's all about inclusivity is like perfect. It's kismet, right? This festival's been a bucket list festival for me because of that, because of the mission statement and all that. So to be able to premiere my first feature here and show it to the community is incredible. Because the mission statement, like you said, the mission statement just aligns with how I am as a storyteller, how I am as a filmmaker, and just how I am as a person, right? You know, the environment that this festival is trying to create is like the land of gold I hope the country becomes, which is championing different voices, championing new stories, both in the narrative and how it's told, you know, in all shapes and forms. So to be here is, I've been using this word vindication and validation a lot, right? It feels like validation that we're in the right space and we're doing the right thing. And to be able to share this film with this community means the world to me, because, you know, I feel like as filmmakers of color, we're often told, or like, we're making niche films, right? Like, that's what we're doing. We're making niche films, but that's not what we're making these films for. Yes, we're making it for our communities, but we're also making it for everybody. Like, we're not making films for 5 people, you know? So to be in Bentonville, to be in Arkansas, it feels really special to be able to share this story here in particular, because I think we can reach an audience that we may not have reached before. And this movie, it's a surrogate father-daughter story, right? Like, it doesn't matter what your background is or where you're from, what your income level is or anything. You can see this movie, and I really fundamentally believe you'll find something in there that you can connect with, regardless of where you're from or who you are. Yeah, it was kind of a long-winded answer, but I think I answered it. Yeah.
No, you did. Yeah. And Nardeep, thank you for making this film, for doing so well with that million and turning it into something really special.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure, and I know the Bentonville team is really happy to have this type of film that is such a different story but needs to be told, and yet it lives up to the mission statement so well. So,
oh, thank you. I mean, like, look, the work that, you know, the Gina Davis org and Gina Davis and Wendy and this festival is doing is vital, right? Especially on a day like today with what's happening in the news. That probably won't make it in, but, you know. But
it'll be around when we sadly post
yeah,
it.
Yeah. Not a great day in American history, I don't think. But, you know, that's a testament to why this festival exists and why these types of stories, Land of Gold, all the other stories that are being told at this festival, you know, everyone lives in a bubble. No matter who you are, we all live in our bubbles. And the only way that we can get out of those is through empathy, is through having a conversation with people, right? And through storytelling, we allow you to have a conversation in a different way, I think. We can present something you haven't seen, or see something in a new way. So the types of films, the types of stories that Bentonville has been programming and champions does that work. It helps you start that conversation, you know? Even at our Q&A, when we screened yesterday, at our Q&A, we had a lovely conversation with someone who had some fundamental questions about what the film was bringing up. And I love that, because that's why we're telling these stories, is to start that conversation. So what the festival is doing and championing these stories is vital, because it's the conversation starter, and it's the bridge that can unify us and make us realize that we're all in this together, and that we may have different opinions, but that doesn't mean that we need to be fighting.
Nardeep, that's our commercial for next year, by the way. Thank you.
Appreciate it.